I've been called many things in life, veteran, husband, father, but never old man like that. Jeremy lifted his glass with that smirk I used to think was charming when he was 6. Don't worry, old man, we'll handle your money now. Tessa chuckled without looking up from her phone. You've earned your rest, she added, as if I'd been begging for permission to fade. I stared down at the roast chicken, dry, oversalted, just like the words sticking in my throat. You signed the forms after your surgery, Jeremy said, like he was reminding a child. Remember, the insurance updates. We bundled everything easier for taxes. Bundled, that was the word, like I was a package or a burden. My fingers curled around my water glass. I thought I was updating beneficiaries, I said. My voice was calm, too calm. Not giving you power of attorney, not removing myself from the deed. Jeremy waved his hand like he was brushing off lint. Same thing, Dad. You still live here, right? We just made things official. Tessa laughed again. He's not mad, Jer. He's just confused. It's a lot of paperwork. I looked at the cake on the counter. Chocolate, my favorite. They'd written happy retirement in stiff, pink letters like it was a child's birthday. No candles, no celebration, just quiet contempt masked as obligation. I forced a smile. So what happens now? Jeremy leaned back, laced his fingers behind his head. Now, you relax, we manage things. Bills, property, savings, it's all under control. And if I say no, I asked. Tessa finally looked up. Her eyes were cold. It's already done. They didn't see the man who built that house with his bare hands, who buried a wife too early, who showed up at every recital, every broken bone, every heartbreak. They saw a walking relic with a pension and equity. I excused myself before the cake was cut. My knees creaked as I climbed the stairs. Every step felt heavier than the last. In my bedroom, I opened the drawer where Mary's old photo still rested. I whispered, I wish someone had warned me. I sat in the dark for hours, listening to the muffled laughter from below. My son, my only son, had just stolen the ground out from under me and served it with gravy. But it wasn't rage that filled me. It was clarity, cold and deliberate. They thought I wouldn't notice, that I'd drift quietly into the background, that they'd locked the door to the future and left me on the other side. But they forgot who built the damn hinges. And the cake, still on the counter when they went to bed, untouched just like me. The sun had barely crept over the horizon when I found Jeremy in the kitchen, still in his robe, stirring coffee like the world owed him quiet. I stepped forward, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. Jeremy, we need to talk about the deed, about the house. He didn't flinch, didn't even look surprised. Dad, don't start your morning like this. When exactly, I asked, did you take my name off it? He sighed, setting his mug down with that performative patience he used on telemarketers. Technically, about 3 weeks ago, after the hospital. That word technically, it hit like frostbite, clean, icy, final. 3 weeks, I repeated. You signed the paperwork, he said flatly. We didn't forge anything. You didn't explain anything either. He shrugged. We did what was best. For who? Tessa wandered in then, bathrobe draped over her like silk armor, thumbs flicking across her phone. She didn't look up. We're just simplifying things, consolidating. It's cleaner this way. Cleaner, my voice cracked. You mean without me on it? Jeremy leaned against the counter like he owned the place. Because now, legally, he did. You should be grateful we're managing you, he said. Most people your age rot in a home. I blinked, managing me. It's not personal, Tessa added, eyes still glued to her screen. You're getting older, we're protecting what you built. No, I said slowly, you're repackaging theft as care. Jeremy's eyes narrowed. That's a strong word, Dad. So is betrayal, I whispered. He scoffed. You were always dramatic. This is why we didn't tell you directly. You'd twist it into a betrayal instead of seeing it for what it is. And what is it? I asked. Control, he said, as if that should comfort me. I walked to the window, staring at the lawn I mowed every Saturday for 30 years. I remembered planting the maple near the mailbox, the one Mary loved in fall. I remembered painting the porch twice, alone. This house was memory, sweat, grief, not paperwork. But none of that mattered anymore, not to them. I turned back. You didn't do this to help me. You did it because you assumed I'd fade quietly. Jeremy didn't argue. That silence said everything. In my room, I opened the drawer again. Mary's photo, her eyes, her steady, forgiving eyes. I whispered, I don't think they remember who I was. But I did. And now I'd make sure they'd never forget. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped not in prayer, in planning. Because that word, technically, had just lit a fuse. And I wasn't done burning yet. Grief doesn't always arrive with death. Sometimes it walks in, uninvited, wearing the face of someone you once called family. I sat in the back garden, fingers tracing the frayed edges of my wallet, half listening to Tessa laugh on the phone inside, her voice too loud, too sharp. I pulled the photograph out without even thinking. Their wedding day. Jeremy in a pressed blue suit, grinning like a fool, and Elena in that ivory dress, holding his hand like she believed in forever. Tessa used to call me Dad, too. Used to hug me when she'd drop off soup back when Mary was dying slow in the upstairs room. You're not alone, she'd whisper. We're still your family. But that was before control entered the equation, before I became a line item on a spreadsheet. I stared at the photo a little longer, not out of love, out of history, out of mourning for the people we all pretended to be. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in months. Elena answered on the second ring. Her voice was quieter now, older but still grounded. James. It's me. A pause. Did something happen? Yeah, I said. They took the house. Her voice dropped. Jeremy. And Tessa. They slipped the paperwork in after my surgery, told me I signed it. Another pause, then, of course they did. I let the silence breathe. Elena understood silence better than most. She lived through it during the divorce, when Jeremy rewrote history and Tessa rewrote her role. You kept the photo, she said suddenly. How'd you know? You always were sentimental. No, I said softly. I just remember what people used to be before they turned. She exhaled slowly. He still owes me, from the business, from the house. He told the judge I didn't contribute. I remember, I said. You built that catering company. I saw the spreadsheets, the contracts. Your name on the invoices. He said I didn't matter, she said, and her voice didn't crack but it bent. I matter less now, I replied. To him I'm a body in a chair, a signature he can manipulate. She was quiet, then said, You're not calling for sympathy. No, I said. I'm calling because you remember what justice feels like, and I think we both deserve it. She didn't hesitate. What do you need? Just your story, I said, and whatever papers you've still got. I have everything, she said. I never threw anything away, not even the letters. Good, because paper doesn't lie, not like people do. I hung up and looked at the photo one last time. Then I folded it cleanly down the middle, right between Jeremy and Elena, and tucked only her side back into my wallet. It was around 11:30. I'd gotten up for water, but the hallway light was off, and their bedroom door was cracked just enough to let the words leak through. Jeremy's voice, low and smug. We'll sell the house in spring. He won't even realize until the for sale sign's up. I froze, my hand clenched around the railing. Tessa's voice followed, lazy and sweet like syrup over poison. We'll put him in a nice place. They have bingo and pudding. He'll be fine. Laughter, the kind that doesn't belong to people who ever loved you, the kind that cuts deeper than any insult. I stepped back into the shadows, one breath at a time. If they saw me, they'd lie. They were good at that now, too good. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and leaned against it. My hands were trembling not from fear, but from something worse, from knowing that I had once trusted them with everything. I opened the voice memo app on my phone and recorded everything I could remember, word for word. Then I crept back, pressed my phone just against the open air near the doorframe, and hit record again. Jeremy was still talking, listing agents, speculating on what he'd get for the yard. I got 6 minutes of evidence, 6 minutes of betrayal. Back in bed, I stared at the ceiling for hours. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just listened. Again and again. My son, my boy who once needed me to tie his shoes, now deciding which nursing home would look best in the brochure. Around 3 a.m., I sat up and went to the hallway closet, the one no one touched anymore. Mary's boxes were still stacked there, wrapped in quiet grief. I pulled out the old blue folder with our names on the front, her handwriting neat and underlined, living will and estate plan. I brought it back to my room and sat at the edge of the bed. I opened it slowly. Inside, the original will. Still signed, still dated, still valid, assuming no updated version had been filed with the county, and it didn't mention Jeremy. Not once. The house was to go to me, and after me, to a local outreach center Mary used to donate to, the one for single mothers starting over. I ran my fingers across her signature. She, written it just after her cancer diagnosis when mortality made us honest. There was no revision, no codicil, just this forgotten in a linen closet. Maybe she hadn't trusted him either. I looked at my phone. The audio file sat there, blinking with a timestamp. Evidence. And now a will. If they wanted a business deal, I'd give them one. But mine would come with paperwork they didn't see coming. Elena answered on the third ring. Her voice was distant, like she hadn't decided whether to hang up or stay on. "Hi," I said, "it's James." A pause. I know. I wouldn't be calling unless I had a reason. "Jeremy," she guessed. "Yeah," I said, "it's about the house." She sighed, but not impatiently, just tired. What did he do now? I told her everything. The dinner. The signature slipped between post-op discharge forms. The phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. The will I'd found buried in my late wife's folder. I expected disbelief. Or anger. What I got was silence, the kind that doesn't come from shock but recognition. "I believe you," she said finally. "I've been there." I could hear her shifting, maybe sitting down, maybe just settling into memory. "When we divorced," she said, "Jeremy promised I'd get my half of the business and the partial equity in the house, said we'd do it amicably. Next thing I knew, he'd shifted the assets into a trust and locked me out with paperwork I never saw. But I kept one thing, one signature, one loophole he forgot." My breath slowed. "What do you mean?" "There was a secondary deed back when we refinanced to pay off some of his debts. He put my name on it, temporary, he said. Said it'd be cleaned up in the new filings. But the removal, it never got processed at the county level. I checked last year just out of spite. And your name, it's still on it." "It is," she said. "You're saying he used your name to claim full ownership. And they're planning to sell it in the spring." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Well, that's going to be a problem for him." I leaned forward in my chair, gripping the phone tighter. "Elena, I don't expect you to fight my battles." "You're not asking me to," she cut in. "You're just asking me to look at a paper trail I've already followed once." Something shifted in her voice. Not warmth, not yet, but no longer cold either. "I'll send you a copy of the deed," she said. "You send me that voice recording." "I will." We hung up without a goodbye. I sat there for a long while, staring at the stack of papers on my desk. The original will, Mary's handwritten notes, and the 6-minute recording. They thought they'd push me into silence, into a corner, into a care home with bingo and pudding. But they hadn't counted on Elena. and they hadn't counted on me still knowing how to read between the lines. Helen tapped the last page of the folder and looked up at me. "Mr. Walker," she said, "they didn't just mistreat you, they erased you. Legally, emotionally, deliberately." I nodded once. "They think I'm too old to notice." She leaned back in her chair. "Then let's make them notice." Elena sat beside me, flipping through the deed copies. Her hands were steady, sharper than I remembered. "So this form officially transfers my remaining stake from the old deed into full ownership." Helen nodded. "And the kicker is it's completely legal. Since your name was never fully removed and James's stake wasn't lawfully reassigned, your claim holds." "Jeremy's going to blow a fuse," Elena muttered, almost to herself. I swallowed. Good. Helen pulled out another paper. "And this is the copy of the power of attorney Jeremy used to gain control of your finances. We checked the witness signatures. One of them is a friend of his. The other doesn't exist. Fraudulent." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. Not anger, just confirmation. So he forged my permission. Helen didn't soften. "Yes, which makes any financial decision he made after that voidable, especially if it involved property." Elena tilted her head. "So technically, Jeremy's been sitting in a house that isn't legally his, making decisions he didn't have the right to make." Helen smiled faintly. "Exactly. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. No warning, no confrontation, no call to Jeremy. It was clinical, clean, and effective." Walking out of the office, Elena looked over at me. "You sure about this?" "He laughed when he said he'd handle my money," I said. "Mocked me in my own kitchen, didn't even flinch." She nodded slowly. "He laughed at me once too, when he moved in with Tessa, said I was old furniture, something to be replaced." I stopped by the curb. "You didn't deserve that." Neither of us spoke for a long minute. Then she said, "You should have treated people better, Jeremy, especially the ones who remember everything." 2 days later, the paperwork was finalized. Jeremy's name gone. Mine transferred. Elena, now sole title holder of the house he was planning to sell. I didn't call him. I didn't warn him. I didn't even tell him it was coming. Because this time, the letter would do the talking. I watched from my porch as the courier stepped out of the car across town, carrying a thick envelope with legal weight. And I smiled. Not out of victory. Out of precision. He came in like a storm, slammed the door so hard the frame shook. "Tell me this is a mistake." I didn't flinch. Just turned the page of my book slowly, like the sentence mattered more than whatever was about to follow. "It's not," I said. Jeremy marched closer, waving the legal envelope in his hand like a threat. "You gave the house to Elena. Elena." I looked up at him, then past him to the doorway where Tessa stood, arms crossed, face flushed. She didn't speak, not yet. She didn't have to. Jeremy's voice cracked, high with disbelief. "Dad, are you serious?" I set the book down. "She earned it." Tessa stepped forward. "This isn't legal, this is emotional sabotage." I pulled a manila folder from the drawer beside me. Quietly, I placed it on the table and slid it across. "That's the original will and the updated deed transfer, all stamped, all filed." Jeremy snatched the folder and opened it, rifling through the documents with frantic eyes. You had no right." "You took mine," I said. Tessa's mouth curled. "We were trying to help you. You weren't thinking clearly." I stood, not fast, just firm. "I was thinking clearly enough to hear you two planning my eviction, clearly enough to find the voicemail, the forged POA, and the loophole Jeremy forgot to close." Jeremy snapped. You can't give away my future." I raised an eyebrow. "Your future? That house was never yours. You just squatted in it long enough to convince yourself otherwise." He turned to Tessa, who looked stunned for once. "We'll sue. This isn't over." I nodded toward the folder. "Be my guest, but you'll be suing the wrong person. It's not my house anymore." Silence. It filled the room like fog, thick and choking. Jeremy opened his mouth again but closed it without saying anything. Tessa's gaze darted between the documents and my face, her confidence slowly unraveling. "She'll never let us live there," Tessa said under her breath. "No," I replied, "she won't." Jeremy let out a bitter laugh. "You'd rather give it to a woman I cheated on than to your own son. She treated me like a person. You treated me like paperwork." The clock ticked. No one moved. Jeremy dropped the papers back on the table and turned to leave. Tessa hesitated, then followed. At the door he looked back. "You'll regret this." I picked up my book again. "Already did, that's why I fixed it." The door closed with a hollow thud. I listened to the sound of the car peeling out of the driveway. And then, for the first time in weeks, the house was quiet, really quiet. I let that silence settle around me, not as loneliness, but as a kind of peace. Some inherit silence. Others create it. Jeremy didn't look at me once. He paced the driveway, phone glued to his ear, barking at someone about last-minute movers and Elena's absurd deed. Tessa was worse, snapping orders like she still ran the place. "Careful with that box. That's my grandmother's crystal," she shouted, though I was pretty sure it came from Target. I sat on the porch, the same porch I used to fix with my own hands every spring. Elena stood beside me, arms crossed, her eyes scanning the front of the house like it was an old wound she hadn't realized was still bleeding. "You really want me to live here?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "I want you to own it." She turned to me, eyes glassy but firm. "Why?" "Because they never gave you justice," I said, "and this is a start." Her jaw clenched. She was trying not to cry and I didn't press her. Dignity matters, especially when you've had yours chipped away for years. Jeremy walked past us, dragging a suitcase like it was full of bricks. "This is temporary," he muttered to no one in particular. "She'll get tired of the upkeep. She doesn't even want it." Elena didn't flinch. "You sure about that?" He paused, looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in years. "You think this makes us even?" "No," she replied, "but it makes me whole." Tessa stormed past, arms full of clothes on mismatched hangers. "This is elder abuse. You manipulated him into this. Don't think I won't go public." I stood. "Go ahead," I said. "The public loves a good betrayal story, especially when it's recorded." Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned back toward the house, slamming the car door hard enough to rattle the windows. The last item to go was the porch bench, the one I built after Mary died. Jeremy grabbed it like it was trash, not even asking. I didn't stop him. Some things you lose on purpose. The front door slammed. Their SUV pulled out of the driveway without a word. Jeremy didn't glance back. Tessa flipped the porch light off one last time. I never turned it back on. The house felt different already, not empty, reclaimed. Elena walked up the steps slowly, her fingers grazing the chipped railing. She turned the knob, stepped inside, and looked around like she was breathing for the first time. I stayed on the porch. Some victories don't need a parade, just silence. And someone finally walking out, while someone else walks in. The house smelled different, fresh paint, fewer shadows. Elena had already begun clearing the past, new curtains, brighter walls, even flowers where Tessa's potted plastic ones used to sit untouched. But when I stepped into the living room, I felt it before I saw it. Something lingering. She was standing by the fireplace, holding something in her hands like it was breakable. "I found this in the closet behind the coats," she said. "Didn't feel right throwing it out." It was the photo, Christmas, 3 years ago. All of us crammed together on the couch. Me in that itchy red sweater Mary used to love, Jeremy with his arm around Tessa. Elena sitting just beside them, still smiling back then. The tree in the corner, lights a little uneven because Jeremy didn't want to use the ladder. I took it from her slowly. My hands trembled a little. "You sure you don't want it?" she asked. I stared at the faces. So much looked like a lie now. But there was one honest thing in the picture: Elena. Her smile wasn't for the camera, it was for the hope she still had. "I think you should take it," she repeated. "You earned that much." I looked up at the walls, blank now, ready for her to fill, and then I looked back at the photo. "Let the house keep it," I said. "It belongs to the past. Let it stay here." Elena didn't argue. She simply walked to the mantel and placed it back, gently, like returning a book to the right shelf. "Closure's a strange thing," she said. I nodded. "Sometimes it looks like a deed, sometimes like a photo left behind." Outside, the light had changed. Late afternoon, the kind of soft gold Mary used to call story light. The shadows weren't heavy anymore, just quiet. As I stepped off the porch, I turned back one last time. Elena stood where Tessa used to stand, but she looked nothing like her. There was no performance, just presence. She waved. I raised my hand in return, not as goodbye but as thanks. That house no longer held my grief. It held its own now, and someone else's healing. Some stories end in courtrooms. Others end with an empty frame on a clean wall. Mine ended with both. The house smelled like paint and dust when I walked in. Elena had already started remodeling. New curtains, new floors, a new quiet. But something about the air still carried the echo of arguments, laughter, and the years that got buried between them. She called from the living room, "James, there's something I think you should take." I followed her voice to the mantel. She was holding a photo frame, its glass slightly cracked at the corner. "Found it in the back of a cabinet," she said softly. "Didn't want to throw it away without asking." I recognized it instantly. Christmas 3 years ago. My last real holiday before everything shifted. Jeremy and Tessa on one side of me, Elena on the other. I was holding a mug of cocoa, laughing at something Mary said. It looked like a family then. Maybe it was, at least for that moment, frozen in time. I took the frame, thumb brushing across the surface. "We all look happy," I murmured. Elena tilted her head. "Were you?" I didn't answer. Some truths don't deserve to be spoken out loud. The photo felt heavy, like it carried the weight of every word I'd swallowed since that night at the dinner table. "You sure you don't want it?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman Jeremy had broken, rebuilt, and unknowingly turned into my final ally. "No," I said. "Let the house keep it." She frowned slightly. "The house?" "That photo belongs here," I said. "To the version of us that lived in these walls, not the people we became." Elena nodded, understanding in her eyes. She placed the frame back on the mantel, straightened it, and stepped back. "You're not angry anymore, are you?" I thought for a moment. Not angry, just done. We stood in silence. The clock ticked softly on the wall, hers now. Through the window, I could see sunlight spilling across the lawn where Jeremy once played as a boy. I remembered teaching him how to plant those azaleas near the fence. He never watered them. I turned to leave, my footsteps echoing across the bare floorboards. At the door, I paused and glanced back. Elena stood at the porch, sunlight catching the edge of her hair. She waved once, a small, grateful motion. And for the first time, it hit me. She didn't just inherit property. She inherited closure. I walked down the driveway slowly, the air calm and clean. The photo stayed behind where it belonged. The past was no longer my responsibility. Some houses hold grief, others forgiveness. This one finally held both.